All right, well, let's get started. I know more people are going to be joining, but I know we have an action-packed hour, so we'll want to get going. I'm Ron Gray with the Center for Science Teaching and Learning. We're excited to host today's seminar on an incredibly important and timely topic, namely a pandemic, systemic racism, and STEM education. We're joined today by two very highly respected scholars in science education, whom I'm excited to say have joined forces, using a Marvel metaphor, have joined forces to engage in a very critical topic at this time. Dr. Todd Campbell is a professor of science education and chair of the Department of Curriculum and Instruction at the University of Connecticut. And Dr. Okhee Lee is a professor of childhood education at New York University. A couple of quick notes before I turn it over. First, please make sure you've kept yourself muted until the question time at the end, and they've asked to keep questions until the very end of the talk. As we near the end of the hour, please either put a question in the chat or use the raise hand function, and I will keep track of those and facilitate questions in the order that they're put up. Also, Drs. Campbell and Lee are available to continue the discussion after the hour, at least a little bit after the hour. So feel free to leave at 11 o'clock Mountain Standard Time if you need to, but otherwise feel free to stay for a bit more discussion if you prefer. With that, welcome Drs. Campbell and Lee.
Thank you. I'll start us, and we have an ambitious agenda to try to engage you in. Okhee and I have started collaborating recently. I love Okhee's work and have been influenced by it, and am honored to be able to work with her. We started thinking about what could we learn from the COVID-19 pandemic and what implications might it have for science teaching and learning, and that's what we're sharing today. And this is, I would propose, this is an evolving research trajectory that we are engaging in, and it's moved from theoretical work or conceptual work to curriculum work and back, and then we envision this going into grant work as well. So our title, The COVID-19 Pandemic and Systemic Racism, Creating a New Normal for STEM Education with Social Justice for All Students. Ron already introduced us. These are just some of our research focus, or mine. I try to influence policy just by thinking about implementation of the standards, and then I try to influence practice just with some practitioner work or some STEM teaching tools that are connected to the pre-service teachers I work with. Okhee, do you want to speak just for a minute on this? Okay, Okhee is brilliant. She's a writer for NGSS. I have trouble keeping up with her, and she's a distinguished NSTA Distinguished Service to Science Education scholar, and she's on Twitter. And Okhee's gonna share.
Thank you, Sir Todd. I wanted to thank everybody for being here today. This is a purpose, and it has 3 bullets, and it's something about instructional framework. And next slide. What is that instructional framework, to save the time? So the instructional framework consists of 3 parts. One is using data science and computer science students make sense of a complex, societally pressing phenomena and problems. And then to address complex societal phenomena and problems, we will have to converge multiple STEM subjects so that it leads to informed decisions as individuals and society and globally. And then the question is, what is the role of STEM education to address these complex societal pressing phenomena and problems with social justice for all students? So this is the article that no, go back. Todd.
Hey, sorry.
Yeah, the last one is important. We published it, and it's one of the highest hit articles in the journal already, because there is a great deal of interest. I have to tease you one thing. There are blue, orange, and green, and those 3 colors are not related to the 3 NGSS colors, so don't be misled by that, okay?
Yeah, we know in Arizona is not an adopting state. Am I right about that? So that's why we're making that point. I'm just kidding.
Thank you. So data science and computer science. So before we start, this is the 3rd day of our new administration. I know that we are all smiling, and we will end what that means at the end of our presentation to think about our charge as science educators and science the scientists. So the first one is that data science and computer science promote the K through students to make sense of the phenomena and complex societal problems. We have been doing more sanitized version of problems and phenomena. When you think about the COVID-19 and climate change, and then the orange color of the sky during the fires, these are complex phenomena that are societally relevant. And I think that may be where we are going. Now, when we say about the data science, the mother of the data science is Johns Hopkins University Coronavirus Center. So when you click this, this is what you get. Oh, I have to be, Todd, I have to be the person because I have to show. All right, screen share. Please stop. Todd, allow me to be the screen share person.
Let me see.
Ron?
Shoot. I'm not sure that's going to be seamless. You sure we want to do that?
All right, never mind then.
Okay.
Okay, continue. Wow,
Okay.
Todd is in control.
I never told Okhee no yet. That was the first time. Go ahead.
Wow, okay. So when you click the bottom, it has a coronavirus Johns Hopkins Resource Center. This is what you get.
Oh, an error. You get this.
You get this. All right, you get, wow. Global cases, we have what? 100 million cases. Crazy. Now look at down the US. We have a 25 million cases. That is crazy. India, US has only 330 million. India has 1.3 billion. But look at the proportion of the US. So that's on the left side. Well, I'm from Korea, so automatically I go to Korea because that's where my family live. Look at the global death. Right now, oh no, 2 million. US is 400,000. This is what you have. Now, Todd, go to the US map.
Oh, that's trouble. Shoot.
That's what we are asking.
That's why you need. Sorry, let's see. No, that's not it. And I think I have to share, sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. People
Yeah.
will keep it that way.
Okay. But they will get a chance, you will get a chance to, like, we want to put you in the breakout rooms and you'll get a chance to see what happens when you go to those different places.
The US map. So this is the introduction of the Johns Hopkins, the famous Johns Hopkins data.
I would note, I updated this image yesterday and it was from November, I think it was like 48 million cases. So it's climbed that much and since I think mid or early November.
Right now we have, okay, crazy. So here is what we would like to ask you to do, to play around, muck around and be creative and find something. In breakout rooms, consider some of the following questions for 5 minutes and you can explore. Now, as of 2010 p.m. EST, Todd, you are predicting in 2 hours. Okay. This is crazy. It keeps updated regularly. Worldwide, the data show how many confirmed cases and how many deaths. So we did that. In the US, the data show how many confirmed cases and how many deaths. And in New York, where I live, in your case, it'll be in Arizona, the data show how many confirmed cases and how many deaths. And then the confirmed cases in the US constitute what percentage? All I can say is that US is an overachiever by far.
Right. So Ron's going to put, Ron, if you could.
Wait, the US death in the United States constitute worldwide. So confirm the cases and death. The next one is explore your own district. Go to US map. It's a little bit on the right side. You look into the states and territories and click county, and then you are going to see the data in your county. So that's the introduction. And you are going into the breakout groups for 5 minutes.
Yep. All right. So there's we'll share that. We've shared the slides with Ron, and he can share them with you. There's lots of resources and links here that we found to be useful. So the next thing we thought about is like, so we wanted to, I'll go ahead and start it up. We wanted to like not only have students begin to look at and try to understand the data that they were seeing, and maybe that gives them insight to explain it or think about it and try to puzzle about the data they're seeing and why it's different in different locations. But we also wanted to try to think about like, what are some ways that you could put ideas on the table that they might start using to start thinking about and working to understand and make potentially proposals or take actions about. And so one way we did that is we found some computer science or computer simulations that help put ideas on the table, that help students begin to think about like what really does cause viral spread, what are ways you can mitigate against the exponential viral spread. And so one of the, I think Okhee noted recently, and it was Washington Post's, one of their most referenced or most accessed article of all time is this next simulation. And it shows, it allows students to walk through a storyline of how unmitigated spread happens, how certain different things can help flatten the curve of that mitigated spread, and then what might be the consequence of being able to flatten that curve. So the next thing we thought about is just the role of that computer science can play in this sense making that students are doing with real world complex phenomenon. So we're going to put you back in a room again, and Ron can decide if it's the same room or he just easily hits random. We'd like you to, we'll put this link in the chat as well. We'd like you to just try your best to walk through that article, because it does a really nice job of starting to help think about the causes and think about some approaches that students might take. We got Ron really busy today.
So it should be in the chat. So take a moment to open that, and then I'll hit the same breakout groups. You are muted.
We are both muted. All right, so we are going to the next section, data science and computer science. And now, how do we take it to the next level? By the way, when we were doing the data science, I was a little bit giddy, and I should not have been. I should have been very silent about the depth that we lost. So I apologize. What I was giddy about is the power of a data science. The data are cool, regardless. I mean, it's just cool. It's a power of science. And then also we are changing to the new directions. And so that's the reason I was a bit giddy, but I apologize. We should have taken a moment of silence to think about the depth. So I'm making up, right? So there was the data, the power of the data and computer simulation. And my group said, so cool, so cool. Wow. Now it's even cooler or more cool. I don't know what English is. So what do we do about this as a part of the making? Now this time we are making decisions about what to do about it, because we have the data, we know how to do the social distancing, we can predict when do we reopen the society, and now what do we do about the data and the prediction, using it. So here is Korea clusters. Okay. We're talking about this time, contact tracing. And I have to say something important about South Korea. I have to say it, okay? So I live in New York City, Manhattan, and that was the epicenter of the pandemic in the US. While my family lives in South Korea, Daegu, And that was the epicenter of the pandemic in Korea about a month before it came to the US. So I have been living with this about 2 months ahead of you, thinking, you can imagine, I kept calling my family, are you okay, are you okay? And then 2 months later, they kept calling me, are you okay, are you okay? That's the situation. So it's a global. I would like to give just a little bit about what the social distancing, contact tracing means. So here's the Reuters, and you can see that we are using the news media to see that this information is available to the public. When you see case number 1 here, Korea started the contact tracing from case number 1 when it happened. All right, you mean that they were in control of it. And it says that red means Wuhan, the origin, and it continues. Now, the long line is 100 people. So case number 1 had about the 50 contacts. Case number 2 counting from Wuhan. Case number 6 is locally, so that's within Korea. And then go to about, there is a married couple. Oh, look at the 422 contacts. Now that's a super spreader. Very busy carrying the virus. And then I think they learned, so go down. You can see that there is completely empty. They were completely isolating. That means it stops. When we say virus is spreading exponentially, it is not linear, it's not a curve. It depends on how many contacts that you have. It's under your control. So we have a lot of 0, 0, and then patient 31. 1,160 contacts. And that was the cult to religion. They did not believe in science. And so my family members who live in Daegu told me that patient 31 is a gorgeous looking woman who was very active. And so here is a catchword of, are you going to be patient number 31? Better not. Now, I would like to say that we do know a lot of super spread events that happened in public. And I'm not going to say what, but you know, some of those super spreader events on television, nationally and internationally. So that's social distancing. You know, the contact tracing, it is a political issue. What about privacy and all that? So convergence of, then we are going to the next one. Okay, so what do we do? The one that patient 31 is as an individual, what to do and what not to do. This is as a society. So what about the US? We already know that we are overachievers, both in terms of cases and deaths. So what does it look like and what each society does? Todd, are you doing it or am I doing it?
It would probably be better if you do it, if you want to build it in real time.
Okay. But I have to have the screen share though.
Yep, you want to, I'll go ahead.
All right, yes. Share. All right. So I am building, and I would like to make one point about this, what we are doing. It looks that it seems so seamless. What seems so seamless involves a lot of work. There are just gazillions of data sources, and it's putting the data sources in a storyline that makes sense, tell a story. So this is what we are doing. We're not showing the data. We are using the data to have the storyline. Now here is Oxford University. Johns Hopkins is a university, so they don't charge. Here is Oxford. Okay, they have a coronavirus and they are not collecting data. They are using the data that is available. I think it's from Johns Hopkins, and you can go to our world in data, and I am going down. This is what I call spaghetti lines. We see spaghetti lines in Washington Post and New York Times, everywhere, spaghetti lines. And it has a lot of information. And what I'm most interested in is eventually what happens after the infections. And so I would have made it much bigger, but here is a coronavirus death. And you are going to have 5 minutes of breakout groups, so please follow coronavirus death. And this is what I have. confirmed death and total number of confirmed death. And I'm going to build what it looks like. And every time I do, I feel like I am the Wizard of Oz, and I presto, and then you will see something. And here is linear. I'm not logarithm, linear. And we do know that right now, 2 million people death in the world. And our world in data, so I'm going to go there and add country. And I'm going to take out the world because we know 2 million. So I'm starting from what we know that some of the very impressive cases. I could have done New Zealand, Prime Minister Arden, Australia, Korea, China. So I'm starting from my family, Korea. So I'm going to do a few Asian countries, South Korea, and I get reports from my family, and I'm going to go to Japan. All right, let's see, Japan is that, and then I'm going to go to China that has 1.45 billion population. And all I have to do is press down. Would you like to see it? Drum roll, please. Like that. So South Korea, Japan, and China. That makes sense because China has 1.5 billion, Korea has about 50 million, and Japan has, so you see China is, okay, Japan is increasing. Oh, they would be very concerned right now. Korea too. Now, because of it's a pretty limited interval, it looks very significant. Now I am going to add more country. This time I'm going to add European countries because we started learning about Italy. Okay, we cannot travel to Italy. We are so sad at one point. Okay. We could not go to France because of all the lockdown, France. And then the Spain, that, and let's see, Germany Chancellor, Angela Merkel as a physicist doing something. And then Germany is, where is that? Right here. And then United Kingdom. All right, those are 5 European countries, and you're going to say, drum roll, please. You would like to see it, and all you have to do is click, and this is what you get. So the Asian country is on the bottom, like that, okay. I'm going to ask you to think about what that means, and then I'm going to do one more. I know I'm just killing your wonder and excitement, but you're going to visit. Here's the United States, and I'm not going to show it. You're going to do it. Ron, 5 minutes to play this site.
Okay, am I sharing this time?
Hold on a second. You're sharing. So
Okay.
before we proceed, we have seen 3 data sources: the Johns Hopkins, and then computer models, and death rate. I hope that you get those data sources to think about the storyline and how US is doing.
So we went in, and one thing that was really interesting is like just what I didn't get to it in my group because I messed this up. When you put the United States on that map, like it completely changes the graph. The Y and X axis have to change, or at least the Y axis. And so it's just amazing that we require the graph to change so much once you add the US. While certainly not the last, and not and probably as or more important than anything else we talked about, one of the things we know that's happened from the coronavirus in particular, but that's always been there. I'm going to back up. Sorry. It's just the racial and ethnic inequities that are endemic in our society. And so, but the COVID-19 has made that even more pronounced. And so one thing we think this also affords, this focusing on pressing societal issues also allows us to do in science classrooms, is to orient toward that and to think about what data we have to support claims about that, and then what justice-centered actions we can take to address that in the future. So in our third part, thinking about how STEM disciplines and STEM education in concert can work to address systemic racism. So in this one, there's data sources now at our disposal that students can use to begin to look at and orient toward the data about the disparate impact of COVID-19, but also this could be found in climate change or air quality, and I think the New York Times had an article about that recently, which was also connected to systemic racism in other parts of the world. So STEM disciplines, these resources we can find here, or statistics we can find here, is just racial inequities that are emerging in news articles since the pandemic has begun. So it shows, like, I could click on these. Some of these show like African-American populations or Latino populations are 2 to 3 times more likely to get COVID. And then also the deaths are just as dire. There's another article here that shows how those counties where Latino populations are higher, those are the counties that have the higher rates of infections. So we want to not only use the data, but use it in ways that has students look for and think about, like, who's benefiting and who's not benefiting, but who's really being influenced and who's not, and then what can be done about it. So some of the, and then trying to think through, like, what are the reasons. So first we want to orient them to the data and to be able to look at and see if there's data that supports claims to say the racial disparities are emerging in this pandemic, and then what might be the causes of that. And so some of the things that we would orient students toward, and we're going to talk about some lesson plans we've developed and are posting at NSTA, where not only do they look for the data and see if they can make claims about the racial disparities, they also look for the causes that might be causing that. And so things like more essential workers coming from Black and Brown communities, more public transportation necessitated for that, more small living quarters, multi-generational families living in those quarters. Like, those are things that really are outcomes of systemic racism in our society that's causing increased harm to those communities. Here's a example of, like, the disparate wage disparities between Black and white households, and you can see it's half. So that's half the resources Black communities have to protect themselves, or to afford themselves the opportunity to stay home or to take those extra precautions. Another one we found is just here, really looking at unemployment, but also looking at institutionalization. So, like, prisons, and you can see that that's also a huge problem with the COVID pandemic, but it's also disproportionately affecting Black men. So our ideas are, COVID-19 helps us accentuate that problem, like make apparent this is a problem. And it also kind of holds us accountable to be, not be complicit anymore and just being, trying to portray science as this apolitical endeavor that doesn't intersect with our society or our lives or our decision-making. So we can see how it manifests disproportionately. There's evidence of that, and you can find it. I'll show you a few things when we look at our daily do that we've created, where you can find it easily across states in the data that's been shared, if it's been shared. And so we want students to recognize the systemic racism associated with this pandemic, and then we want to position them to try to think about what some justice-centered solutions they might propose might be. One of those might be, like, as simple as, if we know Black and brown communities are using public transportation more. We have to figure out ways to sanitize that public transportation or to keep it, work on that as an initial place to start trying to level the playing field, at least in some way, or at least from a student's perspective with ideas. So we started creating, this was like everything we showed you were like all the resources we found that were compelling, but then our idea was to think about a framework of using data science, using computer simulations to put ideas on the table, thinking about and orienting towards social justice. And then we wanted to say, what does it matter for teachers and how could we orient them to that? So we created a daily do that's posted on the NSTA website that helps families look at what's happening in their communities, compare it to other communities, think about it in the context of, I'll show you. So students and their families explain the difference found when comparing their community to other communities that might matter to them. And then they try to make some informed decisions. So for us, in the Johns Hopkins website, I'll go here. If they go to the US and they go to their state and they click on their county, it'll give them this infographic and it shows them like what's the trends been over the last 2 weeks. So they get really specific information about their community. And in our daily do, we ask them to find theirs in one other community that they might care about or be interested in to make some comparisons about. Then we also oriented them to this a simplified version of that article we looked at in the Washington Post so that they could get ideas about what's happening and why what they see in the spread, why might that be happening and how. And then the last thing, it's part of the first daily do we did is shared some CDC guidance that they provided for schools to make decisions about whether communities should open back up their schools. And then we had them think about what they saw in their communities from the Johns Hopkins data and whether that would, where it sits with what their community is doing and what recommendations they might make to their community in terms of whether they should or shouldn't potentially be in school or what ways they could make informed decisions about being in or being out of school, being in hybrid or not. And then the next one we're working on, I'd say it's in preparation, not in press, but it's close. We started the second one, which we're hoping to put daily do's together into a storyline. So the second one really focuses on that social inequities that are surfacing in the pandemic. And so we start out with like having them look at New Mexico and we also are working with a math educator. So they're helping us think through like, how can we really take advantage of the different representations and meaning makings that happen in math to have students both learn math, science, and focus on social intersects. And so down here, this is a same representation of the same data, but different representation. And you could see American Indian, Alaskan Native in New Mexico is just really being impacted. So once they see the data, have the data to make the claims, then we push them to providing some resources for them to start explaining why that data might be, why it might be happening. So what's the cause behind it? And these articles, which are public media, take them, or media that's open to the public, take them to start looking at and explaining why these things are happening. And then the last thing we ask them to do is think about some justice-centered proposal that might help them approach one of the issues that they see at a level they might be able to attend to. So, Okhee.
And here is a summary of what STEM can do to explain the phenomena and design solutions while also addressing systemic racism. And that's a summary of it. And the next slide is, we need to think about what we as STEM educators need to think about. And the next slide is what excites us that we can get up. Here are the 4 priorities of the new administration. And it's a systems of thinking, and it starts from COVID-19 under control, and which affect disproportionately of the minorities, and then racial equity in terms of the death and who are dying in the US, And then the same idea of a climate change, and it's climate change is used as environmental justice because it affects disproportionately of rural, native, and urban. So they are all interrelated, and the website keeps changing. And I would like to ask you to visit Build Back Better with no space and just in small letter, so that you can see how it keeps changing. And right now it is COVID-19, economy, racial equity, climate change, and then health, and then US in the presence of the world, or something like that. There are 7 of them. So that's the role of a STEM education and what we play. That ends. And thank you so much for staying. We still have 4 minutes.
We went a little over, Ron. Sorry.
It's because
Okay.
it's because of a changing the who is
That's
who.
right. Yeah.
That's why. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. So we have a few minutes for questions. Like I said in the beginning, if you need to leave at 11 o'clock, please do. But if you'd like to stay on, feel free to chat, type it in the chat, or we can feel free to just unmute yourself and ask a question. Todd, if you want to maybe stop sharing so we can kind of see everybody as we have a discussion. Can you see the chat and can you see the comments, or would you like me to?
Yeah, your help would be great, Ron.
Okay, so Laura says, wouldn't it be clear to explain the number of cases and deaths per population group and a percentage of the population that the group occupies within the region? For instance, what is the percentage of Black people of the total population of New Mexico? How does it compare to the total percentage of number of cases and deaths?
I think I'm going to let Okhee talk too. I think I think that definitely makes sense. The thing we were trying to do in the daily do was just to try to allow students the agency to try to figure out different, or to compare between different representations,
Right.
and then to allow them to try to come to which one of these really is the most fair comparisons potentially. But then also it was nice to be able to let them see that there are, like, the disparities seem to show up at different degrees, I guess, when you change across those representations. But I know that's I don't know math ed, but I like the idea of like using different representations of data to make meaning of social phenomenon would also be a valued pursuit in math ed too, I think, according to our colleague.
My response to the question is that Todd and I have accomplished our goal by asking you to raise the questions. And that is your question, and you'll figure it out by digging into the data. And then once you find the data, and you're going to ask the next question. And we hope that eventually or gradually that all the data about the COVID data or climate change will be accompanied by the racial and regional inequity, so that the almost like the achievement gap, the disaggregating by demographic data, so that it becomes nationally and by demographic groups. And then I'm hoping that most of the data will become dashboard information so that we can keep track of.
Yeah, I see someone saying something about it'd be nice to have a database for vaccinations. I also have been thinking of my daughter's a teacher, and I want to see what happening with students and teachers, and but I haven't seen that yet. But I agree, the vaccination, it feels like the next thing, like this is so timely. We have to jump on it right when it happens, which requires social media or public media or media outlets, if we're going to make a difference in it while it's relevant. But it also provides that really good space for supporting science and math learning.
And that's also part of the storyline. So we started using the data science and the computer science because they became more available early on the event. And then about what event people should do, mask wearing and social distancing and contact tracing. And now we are talking about the next daily do, we hope will be about the engineering. How do you solve the problem? And then the next will be some simulation of mask wearing. And then the next is a vaccination, because that's another, it's a little bit like a storyline of events as the phenomenon or problem develops. So that vaccination next. You can see how to build a storyline as things change.
All right, thank you. Luis, do you have a question?
No.
Oh, sorry, you unmuted, so I thought you were preparing.
Oh, no.
I see someone says ArcGIS has an online system that allows you to overlay social data. I think that's great. Like I'm sure we haven't captured, we did a presentation for the Math for America fellows, and one of the elementary teachers showed us a really impressive engineering work she's been doing with her students around COVID-19, and we're impressed. We've latched onto her as a partner now because of that.
Okay, when Todd said her students are not high school students, first, second, third, and fourth grade students, that they volunteer. Someone made a mask, a second grade made a mask, and she got the feedback from her classmates that it has to be a station of a mask and cleaning and others. So she was doing the distancing of the items that were mask and whatever Clorox, but the cleaning and like that. And the reason is that we would like to help the people, essential workers, something by sanitizing or putting things in order. It's second, third, or fourth grade.
I saw Mercedes put here in Mexico, it's been terrible. The president is used as a political campaign. And I think that's really compelled us to try to take on this work, is like, we can't let the professionals who could have influence with data sit on the sidelines while people make stuff up, and especially and use it for political gain. And so like, I feel like that's as important objective as we ever had in education, and science can't be excluded from that, or STEM.
Right, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, go ahead, Okhee, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Todd and I used, again, as STEM disciplines because we were more, and then we extended it to systemic racism. And then there is mathematics, and there is engineering, and someone said about the social studies. And then comes politics and ideology. They're all related, and it's how much that you can chew and have the bite in one part. And this is why we say that societally pressing phenomena and problems that require multiple, not just the multiple STEM disciplines, but all disciplines or all ideas.
One thing I found that's challenging is as you try to put units and lessons together that are around social justice and these types of issues, whether it's even climate science, sometimes it can be hard to match it to the science standards, science content that we're studying. So based on this, where do you think this fits within kind of thinking about the DCIs in science?
I definitely saw, like, I think I saw connections to the life science, where you're thinking about how, like, the viral spread. We don't know the other disciplines as well, but like in math ed, so our colleagues are helping us find those connections there. And in engineering, where like Okhee and I have started unpacking the standards for engineering design with that elementary teacher. Like we found the space there. So that is a challenge. Like, it's a challenge because, like, I don't think anyone would argue that we should be working right at the edge, as close as we could get to make this as relevant and meaningful and potentially actionable for students. And so, like, maybe that's a challenge we have to keep working on in the future too.
So Ron, being part of the NGS's writing team and leading the equity and diversity team, it's a question. So the question is this. This is why we are addressing this question. What would be the role of a STEM education and STEM educators beyond that? We are not going back, right? Right. So the question is, do we try to fit in what we have the standards, as proud as I am, or are we moving forward about what might be the future and our contribution to society? So we are pushing. And we're not saying that it should have fit into the standards as they are, but it could be. I'm going to say it to the people, and I know it's being recorded. It could be the beginning of a next set of standards in 5 to 10 years.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah, you heard it here first. Any other questions for Okhee and Todd?
Looks like Lara has her hand up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lara. Hi, Lara, we can't hear you. I don't know. Joelle, did you have a question? Maybe Lara, maybe you could type it in the chat.
I don't have a question, but a comment based on what Okhee just said. And in our work with STEM education, we have found it difficult sometimes to reconcile when we do STEM. And the idea for STEM is integration, as you have so aptly pointed out. And there's so many complexities. I mean, there's certainly cultural elements, social elements, scientific elements, mathematical, engineering, all the things that you've just said. But when we get sometimes constrained to, but I've got to meet these standards, it becomes increasingly difficult to really, you lose the bigger picture and you lose that kind of problem focus sometimes if we get so caught up in some of the standards. And I'm kind of thinking that I hope that the trajectory of what you were just saying of where we're going to be moving helps soften the boundaries, if you will, of discipline, because we are so tied to subject matter silos that sometimes it makes it very difficult to concentrate and go deep into some of those problems. So it's not a question, it's just really a comment and an observation about how challenging that can be.
So Joel, thank you for addressing that, sharing your thought. See, you may remember that NSF has had 10 big ideas and all the convergence in data science and computer science. And the main theme of NSF 10 big ideas is using data science and computer science and computational thinking as a means to the convergence of the STEM disciplines. And I thought, okay, that makes sense. When you send a probe to Mars, it cannot be one discipline. It has to be all disciplines for the frontiers of science. Well, when you think about the COVID-19 and pandemic, I mean, the climate change, and again, the orange sky along the western coast for days, that you are trapped inside and you're strapped outside. You cannot go anywhere to go because of the fire. So we may actually go more into students doing multiple STEM disciplines to address the phenomenon and problem that is socially and relevant personally. It may. Because, and then you think about it, the new administration's priorities start with the COVID-19. It'll stay. So that it stays in the event. It'll stay. It was something like it's going to be something, the pandemic for justice or pandemic for equity. So it's the two together because of the disproportionate impact. And then climate change is right in. And then racial equity is in between, and economy. So they are going to be not just politics, it's going to be national policy priorities.
I really appreciated, I think it connects with what Okhee said about like Gloria Latson-Billings. Okhee's been sharing some videos and things that I can watch, and they're all, she's been asked to speak a lot, but I like her idea of like, it's disruption. It's really, it's a stop. We did a stop and now we get a chance to move forward in that direction. And she quotes someone talking about like, what are you taking with you? You get a chance, we get a chance to pick, and we're not really ready to go back to what it was, especially for minoritized populations. Like those are not conditions that really supported the learning anyway. So what can we do at this moment when we've been given this chance to make that change? So it definitely like feels like that moment, especially like in my state where there are moratoriums on EdTPA certification and testing at the end of the year. Like it feels like those moments are here for us to do some really impressive forward-thinking things, and then to show how that's different and better potentially than what we had thought about before.
Thank you. I just want to point out what Laura had written because I know her mic isn't working. So I was trying to say standards in all content areas, including CRTL, political views, etc. Science cannot concentrate on science only if it does not interact and intersects with everything and everybody else. So that says it well. Thank you.
Yes.
Any final question? I know I want to let Okhee and Todd go here in a moment, but if there's a final question, we can go with that, or we can say thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to just quickly mention how grateful I am, Todd and Okhee, for your time. And I'm sorry in the beginning I was a little bit late because I had another meeting that I was coming in from. But appreciate your work very much and appreciate your time and your willingness to share all this with us and all the resources. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Max
Thank
is my
you.
academic relative.
Yeah.
Thank you, Todd and Okhee. And hopefully you saw in the chat, I put a PDF of their presentation so you can get all the links off. But we sincerely appreciate it, taking the time, and I learned a lot. It was wonderful.
Thanks for inviting us. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Max. Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Wonderful conversations.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Jerome.
Hey, Ron, don't hang up yet because I'm still downloading the PDF.
Yes, no, I won't.
It's taking a second.
It'll kick you off if I do.
I know. That's why I said don't do that to me.